Let's talk conspiracy theory, culture, and the human soul right now on Gen X News. All right, guys, how are you doing? My camera just went out of focus. What is going on? Anyways, there's a little gap I've noticed when I'm coming in live, and I apologize for this. It seems to start sooner than my video presentation, my intro ends. So I apologize if I ever look like a deer in the headlights. There's a little lapse there. Anyways, this is Gen X News. I'm your host, Melissa. We are streaming live right now on X, Rumble, and YouTube. So be sure to subscribe on one of those platforms. You can simply go to the website. All the links are there. It's the easiest place for me to send you. That is genxonx.com. I have a great guest today. I'm going to bring out in a minute Chris Matthews. He has a documentary. Chris has a documentary coming out probably sometime in March called The Forbidden Documentary, Doors of Perception. And we're going to talk about some of the topics. It's about focusing on communication with non-human intelligence. And before any of you jump and scream, everything is demons, hear us out. I'll ask him the demon question. Promise, I'll ask about it. I had a few comments when I was advertising this about it being evil intelligence. We're going to go through that. We're going to talk about different types of things under dreams, under NDEs, under medication, psychedelics, meditation, alien abductions even, like what's going on. Because Chris and his partner, his fiance, have worked very hard on this documentary to make this come out. They also have a documentary right now on Tubi called Occult Louisiana. If you want to check out the documentary on Tubi, go do that. Let's not talk anymore about any of this stuff. Let's just bring Chris in. That's the best thing to do right now. Welcome to the show, Chris. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you, Chris. Oh my God, there you are.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to getting into this discussion.
All right, so what's going on in the world of Forbidden News Network? Because that's the network that you run.
Yeah, the Forbidden Knowledge Network is always growing. We've got some amazing content creators that we feature on there. We're just talking about Ryder Lee from Raised by Giants. He's one of the podcasts we feature. And we are now putting out films. We had, like you mentioned, our first film came out last year, the Forbidden Documentary Occult Louisiana. And it's been a blast and such a great learning experience. And I am blessed to be able to do all of this and looking forward to talking about the upcoming film.
Well, first question, because you have the Occult Louisiana documentary out. What was the premise of this and what motivated you to talk about non-human intelligence?
For the first film? Occult Louisiana?
This one.
Oh, for this one. Okay, so for this one, this is a culmination of everything that I'm interested in. It's a culmination of not only that, but the experiences that I immersed myself in. I've always been interested in paranormal, the occult, aliens, extraterrestrials, conspiracies. For a long time, I kind of put all that aside and lived life and went into complete sleeping matrix mode. But around 2012, I became immersed in it once again. And around 2015, that's when Forbidden Knowledge News started. And before I had started doing Forbidden Knowledge News and even had films on my radar, I had never really experienced personally any paranormal, unusual experiences. I mean, missing time possibly, maybe some other strange synchronistic events, but nothing that I could really consider very profound or to be spot on what some people would call paranormal. But once I got the idea to start making films, I made the first film Occult Louisiana, and once I started to brainstorm on what I wanted to do for the second film, I just figured I wanted to cover everything that the show has been about and try and connect all these dots, because I do believe all of this paranormal phenomena has connections. There are overlaps, and there are many experiences that we can point to that have very profound similarities and crossovers between abductions and paranormal experiences, ghosts, hauntings, these types of things. So I thought, what better way to have this type of experience than with psychedelics? And I had been for the first, I guess, couple of years that I was doing this show, psychedelics were not on my radar, but I had a very profound spiritual experience, very profound meditative experience. And this was not on psychedelics, but during this meditative experience, I made contact with something that I can only understand now as what people would call the higher self. And
Hmm.
this intelligence began communicating with me, and it scared the hell out of me at first. I thought I was going crazy, but the way this intelligence worked, it kept beaming these feelings of immense love and kind of was able to make me at ease and at peace, not only by putting out those immense, beautiful feelings, but from what it was saying. And the conversation in a nutshell basically was, I came here for a purpose in this reality, and
Hmm.
in order to achieve what my ideal life mission is, there are things that I need to do. There's traumas I need to heal in my life. I need to change some of the harmful behaviors that I have. I need to stop getting in toxic relationships. And this was such a fascinating thing that happened, that this voice, this intelligence was communicating these things that weren't even on my radar, that I had never even thought about. I wasn't even in a spiritual space at this time. This was really very early in my meditation journey, and I was doing it because was going through a bad breakup and I was looking for answers. So this
Right.
was such a profound experience that it during this experience, the psychedelic use came up. This voice during this conversation said, if you would like to basically supercharge your healing journey and boost what you're trying to achieve, the magic mushroom is a good way for you to do it personally. And this was such a strange concept. I hadn't done psychedelics since I was like a teenager. And the last time I did magic mushrooms, it scared the hell out of me. So this was like something that I wouldn't advise for myself.
You
And it
were
was
kind of
very,
resistant to it.
yes, it was. But again, I was able to repeat this experience through meditation a couple of days later to basically get my own confirmation that there's something real happening here. And this time I kind of immersed myself in water because something intuitively told me to do that during the meditation session. I made contact with this intelligence again. And this experience was so profound. It was like it drew me into a vision where I was speaking with this group of very loving, benevolent beings that told me they'd always been with me, they've always been a part of me, and they were here to help me heal, all these beautiful things. And we're going to get into the possibilities of what this is, what those beings could
Mhm.
possibly be. Are they tricksters? Are they demons? I heard you say that earlier.
It
It
was
all
a comment when
possible.
I was advertising
Right,
because I have a
right,
lot
right.
of people who are very Christian out there,
Well,
and
that's
I,
a good question though, because
it is a good
I to
question.
this day have to ask that about many people's experiences. I asked that about my own experience even for a while until I was able to get my own confirmation in different ways, which we can get into. But basically, after those experiences, I was at the time I was doing Forbidden Knowledge News as a hobby. This was just something
Mhm.
fun, but it was something I wanted to make a career. I had no idea how to do it. This intelligence also told me that this is something I needed to do, that I needed to quit the toxic job I was in and do this as a full time career. And I thought that was crazy too. But amazingly enough, within 6 months, the circumstances presented themselves to where I was forced to quit my job because management got so horrible and I hated it so much. I took out my 401k and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what these crazy voices in my head told me to do during this meditative experience. So I quit my job. I moved out to Colorado. I was living in Louisiana. I wasn't really digging it
Mhm.
there. And started doing the show full time, and it's terrifying. But at the time, magic mushrooms had just become legalized in Colorado, and it was another synchronistic thing. So I started growing my own magic mushrooms. I figured, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna know where they came from. I'm gonna know they're not gonna kill me. I'm gonna do this myself properly.
Right.
So I started growing them, which was like a couple of month process. And during that time, just working my ass off, I moved out there with my producer, Corey, and we decided, to start the network and do all these things and try and make this work as a full-time business. And like I said, it was terrifying at first, but within a few months, we actually started to make it work. I don't know how. It was a crazy thing, but at the same time, I started utilizing the magic mushrooms. And at first, it was about my healing experience with the mushrooms, and it
Mhm.
evolved. Through the use of the magic mushrooms, I gained the inspiration to make the first film, as well as the idea of how I'm going to put together the second film and why I wanted to include all of these different modalities of contact and my own contact experiences, which I've had several throughout my psychedelic journeys. I no longer do them anymore because I feel that I've got at least the answers I needed from that type of experience.
Right.
It was a very powerful culmination the very last time I did it, and which, we can discuss all of that. But basically, I wanted this film to be about what lies beyond our visual perception, the seeming ecosystem of life that could exist beyond what we're aware of, and how it communicates with us. What is it? Is it one thing? Is it many? Is it a grand trickster intelligence that masquerades
Mhm.
as different things to try and get us to go in certain directions, do its bidding? Is it different intelligences, like a hierarchy, negative and positive, and everything in between? And this is some of the questions that I get into, as well as what's happening when we enter altered states like meditation or take psychedelics, as well as what's happening when people have no interest in psychedelics, don't do anything to get into altered states, but they're abducted, and they have this whole scenario that seems to be a complete infringement on their free will, very traumatizing, and very intrusive, changes
Right.
a person's life. And then you have the other side, which people have very positive and benevolent experiences that also change their lives for the positive. Angels, these interdimensional light beings, and as well as the near death experience and how it can also connect to these other experiences, the beings we encounter there, and what it means for the overall human experience. What the hell are we doing here? So
I want to ask
that's
you,
basically it.
you talked about getting in touch with your higher self. Do you ever remember talking to that kind of higher self as a child and then you just got cut off from it? Like, do you ever have, or was that your first time being aware of it?
Interestingly enough, I've come to realize that with the voice I was talking to, I've always been talking to. It's the voice that says,
Mhm.
"Don't do that, you idiot. Maybe you shouldn't touch that. This seems like a good idea. Maybe you should pursue this." What some people would call their conscious, that second voice that basically nudges you if you're doing something stupid. But during these experiences, it became something separate. It kind of presented itself separately, and it was something that felt different than that normal voice that was always there. But during my psychedelic journeys, I was taught that it is the same voice, and I was shown how it can separate itself
Mhm.
in order to get our attention, in order to basically make us aware that there's something greater than what we're experiencing here. So yes, that voice has always been with
Right.
me, and I think everyone has this voice. And some people call it the higher self, the daemon, the the grand spirit, whatever you want to call it, your soul. but I believe that this is what I became aware of and was able to consciously communicate with and still do, even though I don't use the psychedelics anymore.
So, when you made this documentary, were you traveling from different locations? Like, was that the setup premises? Because I remember you guys saying something that you were going to be in Utah,
Yes,
on your, and so I'm assuming that you, there was, is it interviewing guests
I
or is
interviewed I
the
interviewed some wonderful
topics?
people.
Hmm.
It it de- they kind of intertwined the people I interviewed. You know, the topics were so connected that they were able to speak on multiple topics. But I had people
Right.
like Ryan Burns, Trey Hudson, Carlos Tanner,
Hmm.
Brandon Thomas, Lindsay Sharman. I had a bunch more that I'm going to kind of keep a surprise, but
Right.
all these wonderful guests that speak about not only their experiences but others and the research that they've done uh, in these various topics, and I think they bring some wonderful perspectives to the table. And I don't think that, as anyone has thus far, has really gotten any answers to these questions, because maybe it's possible that we're not supposed to know some of these things. Some of these topics are so complex and so multi-layered. It seems like the more I
Hmm.
learn, the more doors that opens up, and it's like a
It's like
never-ending onion that you
you
keep trying to
thought
peel.
you were going to find everything out, and we're just tricking you.
Right.
We're going to give you more.
But I
So,
do think that we really opened some interesting doors, and it'll really get people looking at some different possibilities and thinking out of the box when it comes to not only contact, but life after death and our experience here.
mhm. I want to start with the dreams because those are like basic to humans. Every night we have to go to sleep, and every night we may or may not remember it, but we dream. And I don't want you to give away your whole documentary or anything or the guests, but what's your experience with dreams? Like, what's the purpose in your mind?
Right. Well, we had Daniel Rekshan on to talk a lot about dreams, and he is the chief dream officer at Dreamwell, and they basically analyze dreams. They do it through many different ways. He also explores psychedelics, and he focuses on the non-human intelligence contact phenomena that occurs during dreams. And himself, and basically it really aligns with what I believe as well, that when we're dreaming, it is not just our brains processing, but our consciousness is entering these different realms, and we are interacting and receiving information, and we're giving out information, and we're living experiences in these different realms. And when we are there, when we're immersed in it, it is a real experience. And just like these profound psychedelic experiences, if anyone has ever had these, whenever you're immersed in that experience, and it is almost like an out of body, completely immersive experience, when you're there, it is more real than this life, than this
Mhm,
reality. And when you come back, it's like a dream. It's very hard to remember. It's all
mhm,
jumbled up, and it's very much similar to then when we're having dreams, and then when we awake and we can't remember those dreams. And he believes that the entities that we're interacting with, this is where it gets complex, and this also opens up many different possibilities, but they represent aspects of our consciousness. That doesn't mean that they are not intelligent, that they don't have their own singular aspects and
mhm,
personalities and things like that, but they are a part of our inner universe, that our mind's eye, that whenever we take substances like psychedelics or we dream, we are going within ourselves, which is a connection to the unseen worlds, the unseen realms. and there's many different layers, there's many different levels, and there is what we could call thought forms, which is the collective energies that everyone puts out there and say that if we believe in something enough, it kind of manifests in these realms. Like, the say we are, they have a group of people that are talking about being terrorized by a giant smurf in the night, and it was actually just a story that somebody made up, but it gets told throughout the whole village, and then all of a sudden it grows into this massive story that's told for ages. But in the imaginal realm or the dream realm, this energy forms what you call a thought form or an egregore, and it takes on a life of its own. And many postulate if this is what we are experiencing, not only through these dreams and psychedelics, but many paranormal experiences, even extraterrestrial contact encounters, that it may be a collection of the energy that is put out from the things that we believe in. So that's just a little bit of the possibilities that we
Mhm.
discuss about dreams.
What do you think about like premonitions and dreams? I've had that more times than I can say, and those are the ones that I always remember for a long time. Other dreams fade away, but for me, like a dream that's telling me something's gonna happen in the future, it's like solid in my head. Like I'm
Mm.
literally like thinking about it all day long.
To me, this connects with the multiverse or multiple realities theory, that we have infinite versions of reality, of what we're experiencing unfolding at the same time, but slightly different in each reality based on the decisions we make, based on our perception. And I was telling a story to my guest today about a profound example of the possibility of switching through these realities. A young lady that came on my show had a
Mhm.
near death experience, but it was very different than anything I've ever heard. She was in heavy traffic on a freeway, and extremely heavy, and she sees ahead of her a wreck, and this car is flipping through the air, and the next thing she knows, it lands on top of her, and she knows she's dead. She knows it breaks her neck. She's instantly in this other realm. She's surrounded by these light beings sending her beautiful feelings of love, and they tell her, no, you're not, it's not your time, you have to go back. And she's like, well, I'm smashed to bits, how am I supposed to go back? And the next thing she remembers, she's back in her car, she's in on the interstate, but there's no traffic there, and she's fine. And she just has this immense feeling of peace and love, and knowing that she just died and was given a second chance, and like completely changed everything in her life. But there was also just strange small changes in her reality, small differences that
So
weren't there
she's back
before.
on the freeway and
Yeah,
she's fine. Nothing happened,
yeah.
or she's in a mess.
Well,
The
she
accident has
the
happened.
theory is that she was transported into a different
A
version of
different
her, yeah, a
timeline.
different timeline, that it wasn't her time. And I was talking with Anthony Peake today about this. We were talking about his book, Cheating the Ferryman, that he believes that these multiple realities are accessible at any time, that we can switch to these timelines based on just a small decision that we make or a new perspective that we have. But even if we die at an unexpected time, or a time that's before we agreed to in our soul mission or our incarnation, that will pop right into a different version of us, which is fascinating to me. I hadn't even considered these possibilities until recently, but it's very, very interesting. But the premonition thing could be us maybe accessing these other timelines in reality, because the emerging consensus about time is that it's not linear, that everything is occurring at the same time, and we can access it like pages of a book. So that's another one of the concepts that we explore, and we do talk a little bit about premonitions as well.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's really interesting because if I had listened to my premonitions, boy, would I ever have avoided a lot of problems. It's like my higher self was telling me what to do, and I'm like, no, I'm going to be really dysfunctional and do it this way instead because
Yeah,
I know more than you. And they're like, yeah, you're going to pay, lady.
that's the way it goes. You got to pay attention to those things.
So, do you think there's like a collective conscious, unconscious that's has to do with dreams? We're pulling archetypes from there or anything. There's some people who talk about that. I don't know if that you're into that
Yeah,
kind of.
I think that there's definitely a collective unconscious, a collective conscious. I think we're all connected, like mycelia, if you will. But I think there's these eternal archetypes, which are intelligences that have existed throughout time, but we feed them based on our fear, and they are like tricksters, and they learn from us and they evolve from us. And I think the UFO phenomena is a perfect example of one of these archetypes and changing egregores that we're feeding the UFO phenomena. That it was once
Right,
in our ancient time fairies, and then it evolved into the
right.
airships, and now we're being abducted in plasmas and these gray aliens. And I think it's just based off of people have an experience and they just share the experience. And it's such a powerful thing and it puts out
It,
such energy and
it's
fear that,
kind of like a mind, but like everybody's like, oh, they said it or they see it in a movie and they start thinking about it.
yeah,
And
and it
right.
just perpetuates itself and it becomes this real thing that takes on a life of its own, not necessarily in this reality, but in our imagination, in the imaginal realms, which have powerful effects in this reality. And I think there are very powerful people that are aware of this and use that to steer the collective conscious in different ways. And this, in my perspective, is what's been happening with the whole extraterrestrial phenomena from the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, with what they've been showing us in movies and literature, and now the government's telling us, so it's got to be real, and it just strengthens that thought form even more.
Well, I always talk about mind control and the government, and I talk a lot of politics on my show. And I always tell people, look, if your thoughts weren't powerful, they wouldn't be so interested in controlling them so much and establishing different narratives. So I tell people that, but people are locked into things. You know, I notice that with any narrative, whether it's wars in certain countries, there's two of them happening right now. I'm like, look, you're locked up in this narrative and you're getting upset, and that's what they want you to do. You have, you know, they really want to pull your mind in because your power of your mind helps them be able to do what they want to do in this world. Like it literally gives them permission to do it, and
One
you're
of the most
consenting.
100%, one of the most interesting aspects that I have come to realize and explore more and more is how our perspective forms our reality and how these paranormal experiences have to pass through the lens of our perception and our perspective and what we believe things to be. And I've learned about this a lot through my own psychedelic experiences. When I first started doing these experiences, the beings and intelligences that I'd encounter during these experiences started out very dark and malevolent, and it was terrifying. I come to realize that these beings were just representations of traumas and nasty stuff that I had to work on that
Mm-hmm.
were presenting itself as a monster or a demon when it was just really
That's like
unresolved trauma.
nightmares. Yeah.
Right, right. And once I started to work on myself and heal those traumas and work on those things and face, quote unquote, face those demons head on, the experiences became more beautiful. The
Mm-hmm.
intelligences and entities were
It's more.
angelic and light beings, and it would
Wow.
change. Now, I think this also happens with people's paranormal experiences. If they're in a
Mm-hmm.
bad place in their life, if they have a lot of trauma, if they view the world as demons coming at me and horrible things, that is going to manifest during their paranormal experiences. Or on the other hand, if they are in a good place and they have a different perspective about the world, and they have these experiences, they tend to be very positive experiences. And this is something I've observed throughout my years doing this based on the people I've interviewed, which is very fascinating.
It really is true because I most of us we're not born with the intention that we're going to go and have a shitty life. Like, I'm sure most of us don't have that, but I think we don't realize that that this is what's happening, and we think this is just how it is, and things are being visited upon us. And once you sometimes you establish a pattern in your brain, you just keep doing it because it's what you know, and they don't realize, like, they're literally like in Groundhog Day. Like, you're playing
Yes.
the same kind of crazy. I've got a question here. I'm gonna pop it up because I told people to ask questions if they'd like.
Mhm.
Illyria asks, have you seen ResearchGate paper saying there's a plasma neural network in the upper atmosphere propagating orbs and plasmoids? I have not seen that.
I've not seen that, but the plasma orb conversation is very interesting. I was listening to a podcast with Dr. Joseph Farrell talking about this the other day, and he's wrote a couple of books about the possible nature of plasmas, and they could be intelligent. They actually could be what we understand as angels and demons in
Wow.
manifesting into our reality in a form of energy, which is fascinating to me. But the sightings of these things seem to have, I don't know if they've increased lately, and this is a hard one to tell because the ease of access for people to pick up their phone and film things is, it's easier for people to do that than ever before. But it seems like a lot more people are catching these weird, like, plasma entities on camera. And I've
Mhm.
heard an experience from Ryan Burns, who I interviewed in my film, where he's witnessed one of these things, and he said that he saw one that started out like just a ball of light, and it turned into an airplane, and then to a bird, and back into a
Mhm.
ball of light, and just shot off.
So there's this place in England, and I have done this when I first started podcasting. It was not a very good podcast. You got to get better, right? And I had people on, and we were talking about basically Tulpa things. But I had a guy on. He was from England. He writes about a books, and I can't remember what they're called. It was so long ago. But he was saying it was by the Tor in England. It's like this big hill fort.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a town there, and gosh, if I can remember, it's probably by Avebury and all those areas where it's like super magical. But he would say that people would witness things doing just that, like it would turn from a snake to something else, and then it would disappear. So I think this is a phenomena that can happen in certain areas. It's interesting.
I think that this is also something that we have to be extremely careful when interacting with these things, especially if your intention is not what it should be, if you're in a bad place. But I get very concerned about the large scale intelligence operations that mess with these things, the big tech, the Silicon Valley nerd dorks that are trying to
Right.
interact with these
Like,
quantum intelligences.
right,
All of the
like the
stories,
Hadron Collider kind of
right?
stuff. Yeah.
Everything I hear about these interactions that come out, these beings, whatever they're trying to contact, do not have humanity's best interest in mind and seem to be extremely manipulative. And a couple examples from the guest I had on today, Anthony Peak, he was talking about people that try and mess with this stuff and are successful, but whatever energy they bring in may start out as a very positive, benevolent experience, but after a while, it
Mhm.
turns manipulative and even very malevolent and dangerous. The
Yeah.
Ouija board is one example, but he was talking about this experiment of a group of scientists and researchers. This is real, that they were doing a literal thought form experiment where they were creating a tulpa, an egregore just based on putting their energy out there. They all agreed on what it would look like, its personality, how it would act, and they claimed that only them they started to be able to perceive this thing. It was a monk,
Mhm.
a little happy, loving monk that
Mhm.
they made him, be benevolent and always, happy to talk with them, and they were having conversations, and they were all experiencing the same thing. They were all communicating and getting the same information, but eventually, this thing turned evil as hell. And it started trying to manipulate them and trick them and started having physical manifestations like poltergeist stuff was going on. So they had to
Mhm.
collectively will it out of reality because it was
Mhm.
getting so basically evil. So that's very interesting that if
I
we pull these things into our reality, they have a trickster aspect,
this is
and we
th-
don't know what we're
this
messing with
is
there.
so this is very real because we decided to copy something like that when I was doing my first podcast, and we were doing it like a scientific experiment. And I had told a story that was probably a fake story. It was about a haunted castle that was haunted by this cat that appeared like an omen, right? And my co-host was an artist, and he drew the cat while we were talking about it. And we decided we were going to create the cat as an experiment to see if we could create this cat that had been mutilated and boiled alive in its life and now haunted this area in England and showed up and was a premonition cat. So he had drawn the cat, and I'm like, we called him Oxenby or something. We had some name for him. I don't want to get too specific. I don't want the cat showing up.
Right.
And I wasn't really doing that much on it because I was so busy working, but he every day was literally trying to manifest this cat. And I would do a little bit, and we were trying to see if it would happen, if this stuff was real, because we thought it was BS. And then he started to say, I'm seeing shadows. Like I'm seeing a cat walk down the hall. And I'm like, oh, cool. I was so busy. And then one morning I was sleeping and I had a sleep paralysis experience where this thing came in the house, walked down. I could feel it coming down the hallway, and it came in my bedroom and crawled up on me and was like malicious and was like hissing at my face and holding me down. And I finally I was like pushing against it. Then I just went, no, I let go and it dissolved. It was able to dissolve. I got rid of it, and I called him. I said, you need to stop this. I'm a believer now. I think it really happens. We need to stop this and send it away and get rid of the picture of Ox and me, and we need to get this out of our minds because I'm convinced. I believe it, and that I've never had any experience like that, and I really don't want that thing coming into my house, whatever it is. I don't know what it turned into or what it was, but it's so people don't do it.
Right.
Because you don't know. That's why I think people are so concerned. And we were doing it like a science. We saw it all sciencey, like we're going to test it, but you have no control over that. And that's why a lot of some of the people when I was advertising the show were like, "Oh, you have to use Jesus. Oh my God, this is evil." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I understand that concern, 100%."
Yeah, we do have a section on sleep paralysis in the film. I had Vicki Joy Anderson on to discuss that, and she believes that they are demonic spirits. I'm not so
Mhm.
sure about that one. I lean more towards the inner egregore coming out, something that
Mhm.
is a part of our consciousness, although I have no
Interesting.
idea. It could be some malevolent spirit. Now,
Well,
there's two possibilities
yeah.
that I consider here. That one, that because I've had sleep paralysis experiences myself. If it is just part of our consciousness, it
Mhm.
would explain my experience. I was in a very bad state of mind. I was going through a divorce, and every
Yeah.
time I try to go to sleep, I couldn't move, and I'd have this, sleep paralysis. These shadow people would show up, start walking around my bed. Loud banging would happen. But once I got through the divorce, got to a better state of mind, everything, all that stuff stopped.
Right.
But I do also consider that if we are also in a negative state of mind, that maybe that is attracting these outside negative
Mhm.
intelligences to us. Like we're open to it because our field is in a negative state, and
Right.
it attracts those parasitic, if you will, entities.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I always thought like the guy who was doing all the work kind of I don't know, was projecting something out. I wasn't sure because I'd never had that before. And I've
Mm,
been in relationships where when this person moved into my house, chaos, like things weird start happening. And as soon as they were out, it was done. Nothing was happening because they kept saying, I think there's a demon in your house. I said, well, there wasn't any demon before you came. So maybe better leave.
right.
So I don't know. I don't know what it was, but as soon as I told him stop those things, it never happened again. I was like, you gotta stop that. That's not. I don't want that shit coming in my house.
Mm,
And it's
right.
like, and you got to be tough though. You've got to put up a boundary. You have to have a boundary between you and yourself, and decide what you're allowing and what you're not allowing, because it's up to you. I think in a lot of circumstances.
Mm-hmm,
I don't know. That's just
100%.
my opinion. That's
Yeah,
just how
well,
I
for
feel.
me, I went into the exploration of consciousness starting out with the intention of I'm going to follow my higher self's guidance because it told me some profound things and I'm going to heal myself. And then once I realized that I am able to not only traverse to these seeming different realms, but there is a life teeming with life. There's like
Hmm.
an ecosystem of intelligences that are out there, both seeming negative and positive. And I still couldn't tell you if all of this is part of just my consciousness,
One thing.
whatever I was interacting with, or if it is a field of intelligences beyond that's connected to the entire universe. I couldn't tell you that, but there are things that seemingly provided information that I did not know I was aware of, things that I definitely
Yeah.
didn't want to hear about myself, but was very important for me to hear. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting to the mechanics of how these realms work and
Yeah.
the nature of the intelligences, whether they're positive or negative, or if they're just something that can be both based on our perception.
Well, and then there's the idea like I'm interacting with and doing that thing. So it's like, yeah, I think there can be things that are not stable in your life and you don't realize it because you're used to it. Like you're used to the grind, you're used to being stressed out, you're used to having to deal with a lot of stuff and you don't realize it. And it shows up as something external, but it is you. I totally get that. Because if you're always used to trauma and chaos, then you know that's what you'll go for it, and you might even think, oh, it's a healthy relationship at first, but that's what you'll go for.
Yep.
Now, you talked about psychedelics before and doing psychedelics. I know there's a lot of shaman work. Like I watched this one on this girl who had like the old hag visitor. It was a TV show,
Mhm.
and eventually the people who were producing the show helped her by getting a shaman, and he literally was pulling that old hag, like you said, was like probably coming from her because she had so much childhood trauma, and they were literally pulling it out of her and using a shaman spiritual thing. But do you think like psychedelics can help deal with some of these things, or?
I will start with this disclaimer. I do not recommend psychedelics to anyone. This was my personal journey. If you feel
Mhm.
the calling, please do it with all the research possible, with respect, and please be careful. But I don't condone any type of drug use or psychedelic use. This was just for me and my personal journey, and I'll share my insights and experiences. But
Thank
I
you.
do believe that they are a profound healing tool for those that they're right for. For me, they
Mhm.
were a great healing tool. I was able to address things that I didn't even remember, recall childhood traumas, and, basically completely turn my life around and make the changes that I needed to get where I am right now and be able to be in a wonderful relationship and have the wife that I do now and all the wonderful things that I'm doing. So, yes, I think it's a very profound healing tool, but it has to be used in the right way. Basically, I used it um, as a spiritual healing modality, and would have very specific, I guess you could say, rituals that I would do, prayers before, always ask for protection. I do personally believe in the power of Jesus Christ. So I would call upon Jesus Christ and
Mhm.
have that energetic protection. And I've had several experiences with negative entities, whether they're my own demons or demons that were trying to infiltrate me, where the name of Jesus Christ was able to deter these things. But throughout all the experiences, there were tests. I was put through tests. And it was basically to help me learn what I should and shouldn't be interacting with in these realms. And I would be presented with a negative intelligence. And at first, I was, taught how to discern what was a negative intelligence, and basically told that there were times when I would not be able to discern because the tricksters are very powerful in these realms. And I've had terrifying experiences with trickster entities, but throughout it all, I knew I had the protection of my higher self, of
Mhm.
what I understand as God, Jesus, and Source
Mhm.
there the whole time. So I knew I was never putting myself in real danger, but I did have very powerful learning experiences that were very difficult at times, not only during that experience, but in the days and weeks to follow, trying to integrate what I learned into my real life and trying to sort through everything. But the all the experiences really culminated with one very powerful experience, and it actually happened this past May the 4th. I did a few shows about it, but it was all basically leading me to have an understanding that there is an immense benevolent source of everything. And that's what I was
Mhm.
looking for the whole time, through even through just doing the show. The answer to what is there something beyond us? Is there a God? And this source basically dictates everything. We are all
Mhm.
part of this, and that was all the answer I was looking for. And it basically was shown to me during that very last experience. That's why I really don't feel the need to have the psychedelic experiences anymore,
Right.
but I'm super glad I did because, not only was I able to get excellent information for the film, I was able to profoundly change my life in some great ways.
Yeah, we're like talking about like a one source and some like you're saying Jesus Christ. What is like if like you hear about all this like the afterlife is so beautiful, it's so amazing. What's the point here? Like why do we have all these corrupt people? Why do we have all this stuff that is so adverse and why do they let it happen? People will ask that question. Like why does God let all these bad things happen?
If I told you I knew the answer, I would be full of doo doo. But
You're like, I don't
yeah, I have no clue. But
know.
I consider different possibilities. What I like,
Mhm.
some of the possibilities that really resonate with me is that this is a realm of experience, that
Mhm.
basically we're all fractals of the one source. The only way for us to spiritually learn and grow is to have this physical experience, to experience the good, the bad, the ugly, everything between, all the duality. And that's how we learn and grow, because if we were just here and it was love and light all the time, we wouldn't know how
You don't
to
have the
navigate any
contrast.
evil. So that is the way I look at things. We're constantly spiritually growing, and it's always going to be an evolving learning experience. And life is eternal. I do believe in a form of reincarnation, that we are back to experience over and over again. I don't know if it's in different forms. I don't know if it's the same life, but I know that what we are, that our soul, whatever we are on, fundamentally never dies. It never goes away. It's always part of the source. I consider this like a life game. And we control the game more than we realize. The way we perceive reality forms our reality. I believe that we have very powerful manifestation powers. I don't mean to sound woo woo or new age, but it is very true. We do
Mhm.
have the power to shift and mold our reality in ways that the parasitic ruling class would never want us to really understand. And I think
Hmm.
that whenever we die, the afterlife experience, it's, you know, I couldn't tell you what happens, but I've had plenty of people who have shared their near death experiences. And again, I think this is something based on our perspective. Whenever at that moment when we cross, where we're at, where our emotions are, the way we view things is going to dictate what that afterlife scenario is going to be like.
Hmm.
And that's just based on the experiences that I've heard about. You do have the other dark perspectives about this reality, that it's a soul farm, that it's an archonic matrix, that we're trapped here, and there's a white
Hmm.
light trap. Our souls are reincarnated so the archons could feed on us for eternity, and they just have the hope is just a carrot on a string that they dangle to keep us going. I don't like that. I don't resonate with that. I think there's
No.
some interesting aspects that may apply to some pieces of our reality, but as a whole, I think that may be a little bit of
Right.
nonsense.
I
That's
think they
where I'm
want
at.
us to believe that.
Right. That is it. That is it.
Yeah. How about I want to ask you one other topic. I haven't written it down. I don't know
Mhm.
if you ever talk about it, but past life regression.
I haven't
What do you
really
think
talked
about
about past life regression. I'm sorry, you were going to ask something else?
No, I was gonna say, like, do you believe that we have past lives or and we return? Like, is this it? Because
This is a big one.
I've done past life regression. I'm not gonna talk about it. It was way too
Oh,
traumatizing.
really?
Oh yeah, I was messed up.
Wow. Now that,
And I know if you ever want me to come on and talk about it on the show, maybe, but there was some stuff that I don't know if I want people to know. Like it was about past lives and it had to do with my interaction with other family members that existed in my life now. It was really it was like I was like, whoa. I don't
huh,
know if I'm like it was crazy. And I also had this one I can say I did it one time and you have to go back into certain stages of your life now and then into the womb. And it was obvious I had a traumatic in utero experience I didn't know about. It was horrible when I went there. And then later I asked, like, I said, well, did something happen? And apparently, yeah, it was a traumatic thing that happened or whatever. And I didn't know about it. It was crazy. So I think there is something to it. I don't know, but you
uh,
can tell me what you think.
I think there's definitely something to it. Like I said earlier, I think reincarnation is a thing. It may not be that we are, reincarnated as different people in different lives and different times, or it may be because they've had profound accounts like you that talk about people from different time periods being in past wars, being able to actually describe the environment and things like that.
Hmm.
And not only that, but when they relive that experience, it heals an aspect of their current life, which is very interesting as well. But I had an experience on psychedelics where I was able to see past lives, but they weren't different past lives. They were this past life. And what it was showing me is that I did this like thousands of times. And that it kept getting refined, like getting better each time. I would learn something and
That
tweak it
actually
here
makes
and learn
sense.
something and tweak it there. And this, what I'm experiencing during this life, I saw was exponentially better than one of the earlier lives. So that was something that I was able to experience.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's something to that, like, and maybe as humanity in a lot of places we are kind of evolving in a way. There's all this crazy stuff, but life is better now than it was. Like I look at pictures of the city I was born in Canada, and some of the old flats that they had to live in back in the 40s and stuff, and I'm like, oh, life's crap. Like there's trauma now, but life's also in ways better now.
Oh
We're
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of we're evolving in certain areas, and so there is some good on this planet.
There definitely is. If you look at where we're at as a whole, and the way we collectively view each other and humanity and the way we treat each other is exponentially better than at least what we were told in our recent history. So I think as a whole, we are getting better. I think that even recently we had an exponential jump in consciousness,
Mhm.
especially after the whole hibbity jibbity covity vixity vaxity thing. I think people just started to wake up in a huge way, and it's like a hundredth monkey effect, and I think it's going to keep on going. No matter what they're portraying with politics or anything happening on social media, any of the crazy stuff, if we just look at where we're at in our personal lives and what's happening, most of the people that I speak with and interact with can say, yeah, things are going much better in my life since even just since all those crazy events happened because I started to become more aware of things. And I don't think this is something that can be stopped. And I think it'll be something that'll only get better. We probably are going to go through some growing pains and some major turmoil and high strangeness, but after that, I think that'll be another learning experience and it'll be even better. But who knows?
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, where are people going to be able to find your document? Do you know when your documentary is coming out, and where will they be able to find it?
So I'm in the last stages of editing. I got just about a couple more weeks of editing to do, and then we will start our pre-release sales. For that, we're going to have it on Vimeo, and you can also just email me and you can get a downloadable version of it. I think we're going to charge $5 for the pre release of the film. And you can email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. I will put you on a list now if you want to go ahead and prepay for the film. And like I said, in a couple of weeks, we're hoping to have the pre-release ready. The artwork is getting finished right now, getting all the captions and stuff done. I will be submitting it to our distributor by the end of the month, and it usually takes a month or two for it to hit the streaming platforms. And we're going to get it on Amazon and Tubi, all the great streamers out there. So we hope you go check that out. And Melissa, thank you so much for having me on.
Great. And remember, guys, right now, his documentary, Occult Louisiana, is on Tubi. You can go watch it there. It's a good one. I've watched it. It's really good. So check it out, Occult Louisiana on Tubi. And Forbidden Knowledge News at gmail.com. You can email Chris there, and you can go to the website, forbiddenknowledge.news.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so much for
Melissa.
coming on.
Yeah, and I just want to
Um,
say the first film was an experiment. I didn't know anything about making movies. It was a miracle that I got it finished, and I'm proud of what I've done. But I learned a lot from that film, and this film is going to be 100 times better. The quality is going to be better, and I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. And thank you again, Melissa.
all right. I'm going to pop you off, Chris. You don't have to hang around. We're going to tie up, and I thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Good night.
Ciao. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that show. I had some video clips, but you know what? The hour ran out. I didn't have a lot of time. Join me tomorrow, though. I'm talking about this Zizian cult that is like a vegan Sith weird cult that is targeting the Border Patrol, apparently. Andy No's been talking about it. Karlin Borisenko posted about it. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, Thursday that's at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Thursday, join me at 4 p.m. Eastern, a little early. My guest from the United Kingdom is going to lecture on the Highgate vampire phenomena that happened in England. That is Gary Parsons. So we're going to have 3 shows. I am going to be on Ryder Lee's podcast Friday night at, I think it's 10 p.m. Eastern. I'll post links on my X. You guys follow me on X. I'm going to be talking about Jim Jones and MK Ultra. I got a lot more information. I was actually on Chris's show talking about that. I'm going to be talking about that with Ryder Lee on Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. I will post links on my X about that. The best place to follow me is X. That's Gen X News on X.com. There we have it there. And of course, if you just go to the website, Gen X on X, all of my links are there. You can go and watch the live stream. You can also go to the links for the audio podcast. I'll probably have this episode up there on audio tomorrow morning. And please join me for the live streams. And I thank everybody else here for joining in. Jonaside says, fun show. Thank you, Jonaside. Thank you, Incognito. Thank you, Illyria. Thank you guys all for showing up. Thank you, Sean Thompson. Thank you, Carl Zimmerman, for all your commentary. I really appreciate it. And remember to support my guests, of course, by checking their stuff out. And I will see you tomorrow. Let's get this off here. Ciao.